I get to talk about a concept about spinal navigation and benefits and expanded indications. And what that actually means to me is that Danielle keeps changing the title of this same talk around, is that I've always called it spine navigation everything. But I think it sounds a little more elegant when you talk about benefits of expanded indications. So let's see, advance. So that would be me. That was my dad. He was a neurosurgeon out in Montana. Back when there were no neurosurgeons, he was the first one in a 5-state area. So kind of it's a congenital thing. These are my disclosures. So what are the expanded applications? Is that, as Dr. Kim had said, you can actually attach a reference frame and you can navigate just about anything in not just the spinal column, but the whole human body, which is what's exciting about this, is that we use it for reconstructions, we can use it for decompressions, and I get to give a talk that's a lot of fun and show places and things that we do that are a little out of the ordinary. We put a lot of hardware into the spinal column, as you heard from Dr. Kim. Those are our nuts and bolts, bread and butter, blocking and tackling, whatever way you want to call it. But we've been doing this for a lot of years, and I'm going to show you a little more gee whiz kind of cases in some respects. A little trip back is that back in the 90s when we first started doing this, we didn't have all this incredible technology. We used to actually have to do a CT scan and take the data to the operating room and then match it up with a computer. And we did a lot of pretty high-powered work, even though we had some technical challenges. And we learned how to put C1-2 pedicle screws in. And we did some work in the laboratory and looked at accuracy of navigation from the front of the spine. We had a lot of fun things that we did. And you talk about being able to attach instruments to the navigation system. This is some of the work we did, is that anterior approaches to the spinal column, is that we learned how to do these things, and it carries forward today. And actually, this is some of the thoracoscopic work that we do. We use navigation for every one of these cases. If we're going to do a big thoracic disc that needs to be done, we do it endoscopically through the chest. We use navigation, so there's a lot of technology in the operating room that we bring to bear on a patient, and we've learned how to orchestrate a lot of this, and it's amazing what we can do. We're really here in kind of a current second generation, or I even call it a generation 2.5. You're going to see some things in the laboratory today that are even beyond what you would call a second generation, and it's approaching a third generation really with with robotics, and it's not replaced the surgeon yet. One of these days, it's probably going to do it where I can maybe do it from outside the operating room, maybe not too far away, and sometimes maybe far away. But the accuracy is something that we've studied a great deal, and there's been a great deal published about accuracy. And the revision rates, I think that's one of them. You can look at it that way, is that the navigation has reduced it down to very low numbers. The incidence of us taking patients back to the operating room when using navigation is, we can count the number of times per year at a big institution where we do about 3,000 cases. You can count them on a couple of hands. They're infrequent. You can look at the accuracy of fluoroscopy, CT navigation for deformity, every part of the spine, the MIS. The accuracy speaks for itself. Just some of the places that we obviously work is up and down the entire spinal column, which includes the skull base and craniovertebral junction. But the cervical spine is a little more of a challenging place. Dr. Kim had referred to that a little bit. We use a reference frame on the Mayfield rather than clamping to a spinous process. In most of our cases, we have a navigation team that helps us do this, and the accuracy that we have with doing these is pretty remarkable as well. Some of the reference frame techniques that we do is, as I said, attached to a Mayfield, and we actually use some kind of custom taping, and I call it custom in quotes because there's a little bit of flex to everything in the operating room when you're dealing with cervical fixation of the head in a Mayfield. And so you can use tape to actually improve the less flexibility, and it's something that Daniel actually, he's the one who came up with these ideas in the operating room. He said, let's just tape it to the bed, and it seems crude, but it's extremely effective to be able to do these things. The accuracy that we get is way beyond that of fluoroscopy. Some of the C1-2 accuracy that we can achieve with these things with facet arthrodesis, we actually do a navigated arthrodesis in the facet joint. What about complex cases? Here's a Klippel file, congenital deformity case. Patient also has a tumor in the posterior fossa. This is a lady who's a nurse, comes from another teaching institution in Los Angeles. And she had this Klippel file problem with compression of her spinal cord, and the spinal canal measured at 3.85 millimeters. It's pretty narrow. She had a pretty bad neurologic deficit. She was still ambulatory, though. And this is a complex decompression operation, not just the reconstruction, but the decompression of this kind of case. And this is what we use for the navigation, and this is how we achieve that, and you're able to just do the navigated decompression from the backside of this. The reconstruction is fairly unique in this case from the occiput. This lady had a instability of the craniovertebral junction, and there weren't too many opportunities to be able to use navigation to place hardware simply because of the congenital anomalies, and probably placed the longest screw that we've ever done in the cervical spine in this lady's case, and she did well. So the mobility of the cervical spine is one of the places it's challenged, and I think we've solved a lot of those, and we're getting better at them all the time. What about other high-performance cases? This is a Boeing engineer. He's not here from Seattle. There's actually a big Boeing plant in Los Angeles as well, and he came from there. He had this craniovertebral junction problem, required a transoral operation to treat this kind of thing, and these are just walking through some of the steps of doing a transoral navigated procedure, and you can navigate the steps. This is another case of a patient in Los Angeles that had prior cancer operation and developed a deformity at the craniovertebral junction, and ended up with a fixed deformity, and you can see from the live picture of him and also these navigation pictures and 3D reconstructions. We did some 3D modeling of this so we could kind of understand how we would dismantle this essentially and do osteotomies and be able to take this apart, and what I say, we literally put the man's head back on straight. Required a circumferential release that was done through the mouth with a transoral operation, then a posterior decompression with a removal of C1-2 lateral mass, skeletonization of the vertebral arteries, and then reconstruction with various bone graft and hardware from the backside. And these are just some of the multiple steps, and this is doing the transoral operation where you can see we use a navigation frame that's attached to the Mayfield head holder. Even though we don't put the patient fixed in the Mayfield head holder to the table, we will affix it to the patient's head, and we can actually move the head around, but it tracks along with it. Now, is this the most accurate? Do we have 1-2 millimeter accuracy? No, we don't. We have it within a few millimeters, but we can work with that because it gives us certainly better than what we have of trying to figure it out as we go through the operation. But these are just some of the steps of navigated transoral C2 resection and release. For a big complex case like this where we're doing osteotomies, here's what essentially lopping off the odontoid and part of the lateral mass, then turn the patient over and do the decompression and the hardware placement, and that's what the reconstruction looks like. And on the right side, it shows you a large piece of iliac bone graft that is from the bone bank. We don't use it from the hip these days. So anyway, big team effort. What about thoracic spine? Thoracic pedicle screws, it's really where we first started doing navigation back in the 90s. And I said, we need to learn how to do this because it's a place we didn't know how to put thoracic pedicle screws in. They were seemingly kind of a scary place. It's a common place for us to work these days. The accuracy of what the surgeons can do these days is incredible. This is a paper that we published a few years ago. You recognize some of the names that are speakers here today, but looking at instrumenting small thoracic pedicles and some of the accuracy. This goes way back, actually. I can tell by the fellows that were there. This is back when I was at UCLA about 20 years ago. And we're doing a front and back through the chest and through the back thoracic decompression infusion for a thoracic disc problem. So this is some of the old technology, but it still worked then, a little more fiddly, but we didn't have the automatic registration we do. This tumor resection in the thoracic spine for a recurrent chordoma with a patient that I had taken care of back then. He eventually succumbed to this severe problem, but we kept him going literally for many years. He was a faculty member in the dental school at UCLA. What about thoracoscopic spine surgery? I mentioned that. These are some high-performance application of both endoscopy and navigation, and I could say that we do these operations with accuracy that I never really dreamed we could, and just the precision of what we can attack these kind of problems with confidence that if I'm tracking it with an endoscopic picture that I'm looking at, and next to is a navigation picture. So these are the kind of pictures I see in the operating room. And so this actually is part of that same series of papers that we published about second generation with automatic navigation to be able to register instruments and be able to work inside of the chest and take out virtually anything that we need to or access. This is actually taking out a great big nerve sheath tumor, another place. You make up these things as you go along. I have a complex practice, and these are cases that we'd otherwise be trying to figure out how to do it. And we do a lot of them as MIS cases. These are all done through a thoracoscope, and they make it a lot of fun. It really is. What about lumbar MIS? Terry Kim told you all about lumbar MIS. I'm amazed all the time. These are some of the views from the operating room that I get to go in and watch these guys do these things these days. I do my part. They do their part. They do it through a lot of small incisions. What is this? What's MIS? It's doing big operations through small incisions, and you saw some of that already. But I just wanted to show you some of the action shots of what it is in different parts of the spine. The MIS work, I think it's going to continue to grow, and some of the other applications of holographic imaging to be able to make rod placement easier, because if you have perfection of every one of your screws, you look at this. And these are being done through Wiltse incisions in a lot of patients. Here's a patient who had a 2-level ALIF. And being able to do this through 1.5-inch incisions on each side, where you can link up basically 3 screws through a very small incision after they're placed. Some cases that really need navigation but don't necessarily have hardware. Those are some other cases. Revision of spinal hardware. These are some cases. Here's a PJK case. Just gives you the ability to do creative navigation for revisions problems. You'll be able to do custom trajectories. You just look at this and say, how can I do this with any better accuracy any other way? It gives you the ability to fix things that we just never did before, and now we do it with ease. The accuracy of these things I don't need to talk about anymore. They're very high. The deformity cases, Terry Kim makes these cases look easy. They're not. They take a lot of schooling and hard work, and it does take a learning curve of how to do these cases. But I was going to ask him in his talk, but I didn't get a chance. I said, where do you learn these things? And it's places like this course. This is a great course. Here's just some different cases that show some of these little tiny pedicles that you can navigate and achieve these kinds of corrections with big deformity cases. What about sacral and pelvic fixation? These are common everyday applications. Doing pelvic fixation used to be a little more challenging with fluoroscopy or actually non-fluoroscopic imaging, but now we use image guidance and navigation to be able to do these. What about the sacrum? We're just working our way down the spine here, obviously. Here are some tumor cases. These are tumor cases, and here's a chordoma. We operated on a lot of these over the years, and we would try and figure out anatomically where we are. Now we have a navigation system, and we can plan our osteotomies, and then we can actually just go do it the way we plan. The neural structures are our biggest challenge with these as to how do we preserve as much as we can in those cases that we can, but it certainly gives us the ability to do these things. Here's even a place that doing an infection operation. Here's a patient who had a chronic sacral wound infection, had a residual epidermoid tumor. This was given to me by our pediatric neurosurgeon who'd taken this tumor out, but there was a residual amount of epidermoid tumor. And if you remember, this is the keratinized, pearly white tissue. So there was an infection. And unless you get that out, you're not going to cure the infection. He also had a CSF leak along with it. So we managed to be able to merge CT and MRI scan, use it with a navigation, take out the residual tumor/infection, and cure the problem. We had to fix the CSF leak with diverting CSF drainage, but I'm always marvel when I say I fix infections nowadays with navigation. So just another application. So what are some of the other places? We do everyday cases. We've eliminated a lot of localizing x-rays because the navigation allows us to do that. It certainly does in the thoracic spine, where it's been a challenge to be able to localize thoracic disc herniations. And everybody knows what's a common cause of failure of thoracic disc surgery is localization. What about operating room imaging and navigation components? I mean, they're getting better, they're getting smaller. We need simpler setups. There's some technology that I'm excited about seeing here today with miniaturization of these technologies. These have been large pieces of equipment with intraoperative scanners and navigation technology, but it's going to get better all the time. The interface devices between the reference frame and the instruments, that's improving as well. There's line of sight issues. We'll go back and whether there's going to be electromagnetic connectivity or not in the future, that's another exciting place. So do we navigate everything? Not really, but we're doing more and more. In fact, every week, just this week, we had some complex decompression cases of a sacral insufficiency fracture that ended up compressing a sacral nerve. I mean, use navigation to do that, to make sure that we were in the right place, we knew what we were doing, and so we navigate sometimes a single nerve root decompression in a complex high-performance case, which to me, that's really fun. Sometimes when I'm doing a simple case, like a lumbar microdiscectomy, I say, I wish I had navigation to be able to see. How many times has anybody ever left a fragment of disc in somebody, or they left an osteophyte in, or they left a calcification of an OPLL case? Right, we've all done that, is that if we were able to navigate every single case and eliminate some of those whoops kind of things that we encounter, that would be the most incredible time. That's what I think is the future. So. This is some of our courses at the NAS course we just held. We're at this meeting in November. There are upcoming meetings, the spine section meeting, and then of course this meeting I'm already looking forward to next year. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed learning about everything about navigation.